If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the writing is sort of everything, right? Like you can fix plot holes, but if the writing is
so some readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by contemporary fiction author Abigail Johnson. Hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
And you too. Thank you so much for joining me. Jumping right in, let's talk about the very exciting news that your debut novel, The Secret Collector, which is already out on Kindle, it comes out in just over a week as of us recording this on paperback. So it will be out for everyone listening by the time this airs. Abigail, tell us a little bit about the story.
So The Secret Collector is set just on the eve of the millennium, really. It's the end of 1999. And it's about an elderly, eccentric hoarder called Alfred, who has lost his wife a few years previously. He is no longer speaking to his only daughter. So he's feeling quite isolated, but he keeps himself busy by collecting. Only his collections have got seriously out of hand. And then the other key protagonist is a young care leaver called Kian, who is kind of, down on his luck, a bit of a wayward character. And he ends up throwing a brick through Alfred's window, which causes a whole chain of events that eventually results in the pair of them being on a restorative justice program together, where Kian has to help clear out Alfred's house of all his excessive hoarding. So it's a story really about how these two characters who've kind of both written themselves off and also been kind of written off by society build a relationship that actually transforms their lives, despite the fact that they completely hate each other and think they have absolutely nothing in common and couldn't think of anything worse than having to spend time with each other. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, really.
That sounds great. I mean, I love a forced proximity with two characters that want nothing more than to be as far away from each other as possible. It always creates great tension and conflict in a story.
Yeah, I think so. And a little bit of humour as well, I hope.
Yes. And it sounds relatively low stakes as well. So it feels like this could be like a cozy book that you could just sit back and kind of really enjoy and relax.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's an uplifting story, but there's some quite gritty issues that are dealt with in the story as well. A lot about sort of grief and loneliness, the care system. But I think what really comes through is this idea that how community can be really important and transformative for people, particularly people who are socially isolated and vulnerable. But I think what's lovely is these characters at first could seem like they have no redeeming features at all, but you kind of really go on a journey with them and see, the people they are at the end of the book is quite different from who they are at the beginning.
Yeah. And was it fun to sort of dive into the world of hoarding and write about someone who was a hoarder?
It was quite fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen those programs on TV where people come in and you think, oh my God, they've got like 85 mattresses and 300 copies of the Radio Times. How would that happen? But it's actually incredibly common and something that has grown, particularly since COVID. I think the estimates are it can affect 1 in 20 people.
Oh, wow.
But it's so hidden from us, and we don't really know that world. And I think sort of looking into it, I read stories of, like, for example, a person who had 2 houses, but they were all so full that he was sleeping in his car because there was literally no room for him in his house, and his car was filling up as well. So it was trying to get into the mindset of how somebody switches from somebody who, in Alfred's case, actually starts off collecting antiques, but then following the death of his wife, it just spirals into something that he can no longer control, but it gives him great comfort, and he cares for all these items dearly, even though in most people's eyes, a lot of what he has is absolute junk. And it's really not as straightforward as somebody coming in and tidying up or taking those items away, because they're like kind of safety mechanism for that person, and a sort of crutch for them, really. So yeah, it was very interesting, and gave me a real understanding into how people could end up in that situation and the effect it has on their families and loved ones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you did quite a bit of research into this. Yeah,
I did, and I quite enjoyed it. As I said, it's a bit of a hidden world, but something that is actually on a much larger scale than most of us probably imagine. And we probably all know people who've maybe have a bit too much stuff in their house, or have collections that get out of hand, or you see things in the news, don't you, somebody who's got a whole room dedicated to Return of the Jedi or something like that. But it's kind of how that can tip and become something that's actually hugely problematic. And particularly sort of safety wise, the fact that in Alfred's instance, if there was a fire, he probably wouldn't get out of that house alive. And also there's issues like people don't let somebody come into their house to maintain the boiler because they're embarrassed about the state of the house. So there's big safety implications as well as the effect it has on them, because generally a lot of people in that situation do feel a bit of shame and don't want people in their house, which is obviously very isolating. In
terms of the story itself, this is your debut novel, but had you written much before The Secret Collector?
So I'd written a previous novel which began as a short story, and I really enjoyed this short story, which is very different to this novel, but I kind of thought, I might just turn it into a novel. How hard can it be? Having absolutely no idea how hard it is. So I did write the first novel and had a little bit of agent interest with that one, but didn't ultimately get taken on by any of those agents that asked for a full manuscript. So yes, this is my second novel.
Okay, right. I've seen that you were longlisted for the Bath Novel Award twice in consecutive years, and then also the Exeter Novel Award, shortlisted for Edinburgh Flash Fiction Award. Was the Flash Fiction one for the short story that you mentioned, which you thought you would turn into a full novel?
No, it was completely different. And the reason I did that was I'd never, ever been particularly interested in writing flash fiction. I always had my eye on writing a novel, and that was what I wanted to do. I think I was just feeling a bit stuck, and somebody said to me, why don't you just try and write something different, just to get away from what you're writing, but still being creative. So I just had a go, and I wrote this story specifically for the competition, and it ended up doing really well, which was lovely. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. And that was also contemporary fiction. Is that kind of the space that you like to stay in?
Yeah, that's very much my space.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the Bath Novel Award, Exeter Novel Award, was that The Secret Collector that was longlisted for those?
So the Exeter Novel Award was the first novel that I mentioned.
Okay.
And the Bath Novel Award was both times for The Secret Collector, but I also did get longlisted a third time for my first novel as well. So I've had a bit of an ongoing 3 times longlisted for the Bath Novel Award. Always a bridesmaid, never the bride.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was an amazing experience to be part of that competition. I'd really recommend it to people who are, writing a novel, because what it gave me was just a real confidence to keep going and a bit of energy and motivation. Particularly when I wrote The Secret Collector, I had in mind that I wanted to get a first draft finished in time to enter the Bath Novel Award because of the experience I'd had with my first novel. I knew it was just like, it was a deadline I could work towards, and there's a real validation if you get longlisted because, they do get an incredible amount of entries from around the world. So making a long list, it feels like a big deal, and you kind of start to think, okay, yeah, I have got a story here that might, resonate with readers. So yeah, it was a really good experience.
Yeah, I think also what you touched on it before is like giving yourself a deadline when you're out of a contract. There's no kind of fixed point where you have to have something done. By setting yourself that goal of being like, oh, I want to enter into that thing, gives you a deadline. I think that can be really healthy for authors who are kind of out there on their own in some ways.
Oh, absolutely. Because you could just sit here for years in your turret and never put it out in the world and never feel it's quite good enough. And I think it's really, really hard to know when something's ready and when to let go. I mean, you could edit forever, I think, and probably keep, pruning and improving. But yeah, I think that deadline just gave me personally a focus, something to aim for. And yeah, I found that really important because it just helps me get words down on the page if I know what I'm working towards.
Yes. Yeah. At what point was it before these long listings, short listings that you did am I right in thinking you did a Curtis Brown course?
Yeah. So I did the Curtis Brown course, and came up with the idea for The Secret Collector almost specifically to do the course, which sounds like a bit of a backwards way of doing things. But at that time, I was still waiting to hear back from agents on my first novel. And it was 2020, so it was lockdown year. Mm-hmm. And we were sort of heading towards the autumn, and I could see that the COVID situation was just going to go on a lot longer than any of us had imagined, and thought I need to write something else and not just sit here waiting, refreshing my emails, waiting to hear back from agents who had the full manuscript. So I thought I'd seen lots of things about the Curtis Brown course, and for me, it felt like almost too indulgent to invest in myself in that way. Like a big risk financially. It was a big time commitment. I'd got 2 young kids. It was lockdown. We were homeschooling. I work as well. But I kind of knew I needed to have a bit, again, like I said, deadlines, but also structure and routine. And I felt like I still had a lot to learn. And I'm so glad I did it in the end. I almost didn't put the application in. And I wrote a synopsis, and I think I had to write the first 5,000 words, or it might have even been 10,000 to apply. And I could see the shape of this story taking place, and I kind of just felt like it had a chance. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but I just I think I had to have belief in it, or I wouldn't have applied for the course. So yeah, that was the point that I applied. So I think it started in October of 2020, and then I was aiming for the following May to have a draft finished to enter the Bath Novel Award.
Okay, right. Okay, so you really you really jumped in, I think, when you committed to doing the Curtis Brown course.
I mean, it sounds silly. I kind of thought, right, this is my last chance. It wasn't my. It was really my second attempt at trying to get an agent and work towards the goal of publication, but I almost had to view it like, if I'm going to do this to make it worthwhile, I've really got to do it properly. Mm-hmm. And yes, it might not result in anything, and I might still be agentless and in a heap of tears in 12 months' time. But I had to just sort of put all those doubts to one side and really believe in it, I think.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, You know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Yeah. And the Curtis Brown course, like a lot of these courses, they're all quite expensive. But I'm just curious, what's the kind of time commitment that it asks of you?
So we had a kind of session every Monday with our tutor, and it was Laura Barnett who taught my particular course, and she was great. So every Monday she'd sort of set an exercise and people would join in a kind of group chat, because I did the online course. Obviously it was COVID time, but I think I would have chosen the online anyway. I don't live anywhere near London, so I wouldn't have done an in-person course anyway. And then you sort of took it in turns to have a submission, and everybody in your group would feed back on that. So even if it wasn't your turn to submit, you were always quite busy reading other people's work and trying to really do justice to the feedback that you gave them. And that was quite a steep learning curve as well, sort of looking at work analytically like that and working out what was working in a story or a chapter and what wasn't, and being able to feed that back in a kind of positive way. So I think it's quite hard to quantify exactly what that time commitment was. Also, it was a strange time because we were at home a lot. So I've kind of got no idea what concept of what time was during that period. It just it was like one long blanket of nothingness in so many ways. So this was great for me because I could throw myself into something. And I think in terms of how many words you wrote, that was entirely up to you. I was very much fixed on, I want to have a first draft by the time I finished this course. And I almost made it. I'd almost got to the end of the first draft by the time the course finished. So for me, that was quite a big commitment, but that was a self-imposed target or deadline that I'd set myself. But yes, it obviously is a time commitment. I don't think you can just think, well, I'll slot in an hour a week. You have to, be committed to it.
Yeah, and I imagine it's the sort of thing where you get back as much as you put in. So
totally, yeah, I think that's entirely true. Yeah.
Had you done any critique or feedback groups before the course?
I did a course with the Faber Academy quite a few years earlier, and this was my first sort of dabble in writing, really. So I'd not really done any writing as an adult, and then in my 40s I took voluntary redundancy, and amazingly managed to sort of get 3 jobs in the week that I got made redundant. So I didn't need that cushion of redundancy money, particularly to keep me, going, as in I wasn't having an income, because I got straight into another job. So I just thought, well, I think I might do a writing course. I loved writing when I was a kid, and one of my primary school teachers told my mum that I would be an author. She thought I'd be an author when I grew up. But honestly, I really didn't think that was something that would ever happen to me. I didn't know anything about the publishing world. I didn't know any authors. It seemed like something that happened to other people. But when I was young, I absolutely loved writing stories. And I just thought, with this bit of redundancy money, I'm going to just do something for me. And so I did I think it was like a beginning to write course with the Faber Academy. It was really just very introductory. And so I did this course and really enjoyed it. And this was the first novel I was talking about. It started, as I said, just for a short story, because this course wasn't even about writing a novel. I just thought I want to be creative again. I kind of missed that. And then I enjoyed the course so much that I went on to the next one, which was write the first 15,000 words of your novel. So that gave me a little bit of experience in terms of critique and feedback. But there was a very different experience to Curtis Brown. I think just because I was much more developed as a writer by that point. I think I knew how to take feedback, and I also knew how to give it a lot more than I did the first time round, which was very much sort of saying, oh yeah, that's great, and not really knowing what else to say. So I did have that little bit of experience which helped me get the most out of the Curtis Brown course, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a definite skill in being able to give feedback, because I think something that quite a few people, especially when they, when you're first starting out, like you say, you don't really know what to say. So you either just say everything's good, or you say, oh, I thought this was an issue. But I think the trap a lot of people often fall into is that they say, I would have written this bit differently, which is like not very useful, because it's not your novel. So it's not about you saying, I wouldn't have written it that way. It's about saying, there was something like, there was an issue here. The pacing felt off to me. It's more like,
yes, it's digging into what those issues are. And I think that is quite hard to do. And one of the things they did encourage us to do with the Faber course was to read analytically again, which was, even though I'd done a degree in English literature, I'd never read books in that way before, in terms of, what works structurally here, or what's really making me want to turn the pages in this book or this story. It is a particular skill, and some people, I think it does come naturally, but for me that took a little bit of time to get the hang of, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's one of those things where once you know the craft, you kind of experience stories in a much different way the more you kind of do look at things analytically. Yeah.
And the other good thing I'd say about doing a course, although I really don't think that is the only route in at all, it was just what helped me, is that you do get to read in other genres that you don't normally read in. And I think that's actually quite good for you as a writer to read some sci-fi or some romance or historical fiction or something anything that you might not normally choose to pick up. I think you can learn a lot from those different writing styles and how writers approach telling those stories, because actually everybody's trying to tell a story that has an impact on a reader, and looking at that from different genre points of view is quite a good lesson, I think.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because all those different genres sort of have built into the genre, there are specific sort of things, whether it's like themes or tones or pace, that they really excel at. So like a psychological thriller will do, those books have such incredible mastery of tension, whereas like, you can read like an epic fantasy and now you're getting into the world of just really incredible world building and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I do read a bit more widely now, and I'm part of a book club now as well, which I think also makes me read a bit more widely. But there is a real value to that, I think, as a writer, to just not stick in your genre and think, well, I write thrillers, I'm only going to learn from people who write thrillers. I think there's so much to learn from so many different storytellers.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can just, even if, you read every now and again, you dip into something new and you just pick up one thing in your subconscious, which you can kind of put in as like an extra sort of, an extra dimension to your novel, which it wouldn't have had previously it could make it stand out within the genre.
Yeah. And I think also working out what you do and don't like as a reader is quite important as well. As well as learning what works and what doesn't work, kind of knowing what sort of story you want to read. And when I first started writing, so I'd kind of had a little go at writing bits and pieces before I did my introductory course with the Faber Academy, but I had no idea what I wanted to write, what kind of storyteller I was. I started writing a children's book. I had a little go at a sci-fi, which looking back was terrible. And I just think the journey I've gone on to actually just find out what my storytelling voice is and what I want to write took a little bit of time to get there, but I'm kind of glad I went through those phases. So I now don't have a burning desire to write a sci-fi. It's that's been dealt with.
Yeah, but that's good, and it's more common than you think. I've had so many authors on here who say like, that they're writing one genre, but the first novel they wrote was in like a polar opposite genre, maybe a different age group, like you said, and it can take a bit. You have to like just jump in and try to figure out how it all fits together for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm very comfortable where I am now and know this is, the sort of writing I want to do. So I'm glad I'm, confident with that now, because I've tried a few other things.
Yeah. Yes. We are at the point in the episode where I ship you off and ask you, Abigail, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
So this is a really difficult question for me, because I'm sure that everybody says it, and I have heard other people struggle with this answer on this podcast, but I don't tend to reread books. I love reading, but I'm always on to the next thing. And even though I have books I consider my favourites, I don't particularly reread them. So I thought about my favourite books, and I thought, well, I really loved One Day by David Nichols for just being a sort of perfect love story, and the 90s nostalgia in there I loved as well. The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry by Rachel Joyce was one that actually really made me think, this is the sort of story I want to tell, and it made me want to be a writer, actually, reading that book. So that was quite an important book in my life. And then I also thought The Island by Victoria Hislop might be a good choice for being on an island. But in the end, because I thought, actually, this is a book I have to really reread, I picked The Appeal by Janice Hallett. And the reason I picked that was because it was so clever, and the way it was written made me race through it. And when I got to the end, I kind of thought, I really feel like I need to go back and unpick some of the clues and how this story worked. I thought if I had a lot of time on a desert island, that would be the perfect book, because I would try and solve that case myself before Janice Hallett reveals the ending. So yes, The Appeal by Janice Hallett. And that was a book I looked at and thought, I don't really fancy reading that, but quite a lot of people seem to be saying it's good. Well, maybe I'll give it a go. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant.
It's funny how often that happens when you're like, I don't think it's for me, but people say it's okay. And then you're like, oh, it's one of the best things I've ever experienced.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I was kind of that way about A Monster Calls, which I talk about all the time. And then I read it and I was like, wow, that's literally changed my outlook on life.
That's why people are saying it's good. Okay, yes. They were right.
Yeah. Turns out popular doesn't always mean bad.
Yeah.
Amazing. A great choice. And nice to hear about your kind of journey with that, being apprehensive about it and then falling in love with it. In the next half of the episode, we are going to get into some of the publishing experiences that Abigail's had along her journey. So agents, editors, publishers, all that jazz. That will be in the extended episode available on patreon.com/rightandwrong. So
have all this doubt, or whether it's just a writer thing, but yeah,
I think writers just talk about it more, probably.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Abigail. This has been great. We're at the end of the episode now, but it's been so fun chatting with you and speaking with you and hearing all about The Secret Collector, your debut novel, and the kind of the long journey that it's been on. For everyone listening, that is going to be out right now as of you listening to this, so you'll be able to find it in all the usual places. But yeah, thank you so much, Abigail. It's been awesome meeting you and chatting with you.
Thank you too. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
And for everyone listening, if you want to keep up with what Abigail is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at AbigailSJ26, on Instagram at Abigail Johnson Author, or on her website, abigailjohnsonauthor.co.uk. To support the podcast, like, follow and subscribe, join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again, Abigail, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.